We're good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Cool.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on today's live Q&A. I am Troy Dawes. I am a filmmaker and writer for HorrOrigins. First, we're going to start by learning more about the background of Shant, and then we'll go to our Q&A towards the tail end of today's interview. We are so delighted to have an award-winning screenwriter and director of his short film, Night of the Slasher, Shant Hamassian, on our live Q&A today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Troy. And thanks, HorrOrigins, for having me. It's an honor.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I just kind of wanted to run through a few questions, starting off with your background. So where did you grow up and what led you towards becoming a filmmaker?
Yeah, I'm from Calabasas, California, born and raised native. And I went to a private Armenian school and went to Art Center College of Design, not as a film major, but as an illustrator. So drawing and painting was kind of my thing. And I was thinking, oh, maybe I'd get into concept art or storyboarding. I was feeling things out while I was, in college. And but I realized that, it still wasn't fulfilling enough for me. And there's still a story element, a storytelling element in my work. And I remember one of my friends who's now a published children's book illustrator. He was a classmate of mine, and he said, I really belonged at Cal Arts, where they're more story oriented. It's where Brad Bird and a bunch of Pixar people have gone as well. But I didn't switch over. I decided, I think I really want to make like live action films, and I started making some shorts in college, and it played at the Cannes Short Film Corner, and got some special recognition there. And I started doing some big special effects film where I did the editing and learned to use After Effects. I mean, I have the illustration background, so I was able to, make like a 1950s space sci-fi spoof, I created my own puppets and own miniature sets and did stop motion. And so I have this like big, like maybe an animation style film background, which I guess I don't talk about as much anymore, but talk about it now. But yeah, I had some early success with those films, and I was still finding my voice as a filmmaker. And so my style, at the time, you could place it as maybe Tim Burton-ish or James Gunn-like, and the Brad Bird. So there's the animation to live action transition. But the further I got into my career, the more the darker elements was calling to me. Still my true love deep down, I had to discover to my inner core was that I loved horror quite a bit. Even in my animated style, there's still limbs popping off and explosions and some fun little gory moments here and there. The first film I made in college was called The Slow Zombie, which is it's a silent film style, and it was about a zombie who was too slow to catch anybody. One of the, and I know that your next question, I saw some of the questions you're going to ask, so I guess this is going to transition to the next question. What inspired you to, make films, or what's the inspiration, right?
Yeah, what were some of your inspirations to becoming a film
director? Right. When I was 16, I saw Evil Dead 2. And I think that put the seed in my mind that maybe I should do film directing, because in that film, and this is back, very early 2000s, when even CG movies and, CG movies didn't quite cut it. There weren't too many superhero films. There weren't too many movies where you can create anything on screen, So I thought to myself, wow, when I saw Evil Dead 2, a practical effects film, that any drawing that I put on paper can actually be created on the screen.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is like bringing it to life. And it is possible, just a lot of studios at the time weren't taking as many chances. Now it's all about the big tent pole, throw as much money on the screen as possible, bring whatever you want written to life. So now that, so Evil Dead 2 was a big inspiration because I thought it was so creative and inventive. And even though some might dismiss it as a wacky horror comedy, the true horror community understands that there's a lot of intelligence in the crafting of the film and the
Yeah.
design and structure of it, because to do comedy well, especially in horror, it takes it takes a lot of awareness and self-awareness, and how to, handle the tone and the campiness, and
There's a
to make it
balance
really
to
smart.
it.
Yeah, there's a balancing act there. I mean, there's a lot of bad horror films that, oh, if we make it just bad, it'll be good, but you know, but there's no, but that's a lazy approach.
Yeah.
You gotta, there's still a story and a structure. There's setups and payoffs, and jokes in horror. What they have in common is there's a setup and then like a punchline or a payoff, which is the scare or the punchline of a joke.
Yeah.
So that's where the structure of good storytelling, they're all interconnected between different genres.
Exactly. Well, that was a great remark. Thank you for touching on that. Uh,
Yeah, totally.
so, what inspired you to write Night of the Slasher? What were some of the reasonings behind picking out the Spock mask as well? Was there homage behind that?
Okay, so before Night of the Slasher, I was at a really low point in the industry. So if a lot of you are feeling like really depressed and hopeless that nothing you do is ever gonna take off, and I'd already done successful shorts and music videos before this point, but after some bad experiences and dealing with some abusive people on set, and it's just like, is it just going to be like this all the time? Maybe I should look into another career. I just, like I was before making Night of the Slasher, which is a huge success of a short, thankfully. Just before that, I was like gonna quit. Like I was in the darkest before the dawn kind of stage, and you don't even know that you're in the darkest point before the dawn, and you just got to keep pushing. So, but I wrote a script, a full feature script, the first draft at first, but as a way to heal myself, and I did it for me instead of making a short right out the gate. Like I just wanted to write a script that dealt with like a final girl, and it's more about how do you deal with the aftermath of an attack,
Right.
and I thought the trauma elements are so fascinating to me, which is now that's like a big deal in the industry, and someone dealing with trauma is like kind of a common trope now.
Yeah.
And my feature idea has been shifted and turned and gone to another level, which I think, okay, well, what's there left to explore that afterwards? So I won't tell you what that is, but in good time, I'll reveal that. Sorry, I'm going off a tangent. So going back
That's
to
okay.
before making the short, I realized that a piece of this story has to get out there somehow. Even if it's like a short 10-minute film, like the universe isn't going to weigh me down. Even if I'm gonna go down swinging. Maybe if you defeat me, I can throw in one little punch on my way down, and it would be making that short film. And even making that short film was more difficult than any short I've done before, and any feature that I've worked on before. It was so difficult because it's complex. It was ambitious because of the one continuous shot. And if you're wondering, no, it's they're all stitched together. It's like 34 different takes. So that way you can swap out any take with a better performance by an actor, or you want an action to be faster or slower, so you can control the rhythm. And it makes editing a hell of a lot easier, in the aftermath. So in approach to making the short film, I thought, there was a lot of thought and strategy and there's strategic planning behind it. I just didn't do it just to do it. It's like, okay, how can I make a short that's a great proof of concept for a feature, and how can I make it successful on the festival circuit, and when it's being talked about on the internet, how do I design it for people to stop scrolling to take a look? Like,
Right.
what is a short film that people want to stop scrolling and it's clickable? Like you want to click on this. So I had a few ideas in mind, and I did a lot of research. It took a lot of research, and planning. So one of the things is that, not only do you have to have a good story, but you got to have some images and reasons for people to click on it. So reason number one, like the visual thing you're going to see first is, the number one reason is concept. a girl using horror cliches, the horror movie sins, drinking, drugs, alcohol, repurposed, doing it on purpose instead of avoiding it,
Right.
because it relates to her being traumatized and being self-destructive. It's not about a party girl. It's about someone who is dealing with some, depression, anxiety, just some emotional issues. And what do people do when they have emotional issues? They do self-destruct. They might drink a little more, do drugs, they might have sex. I mean, these are any kind of pleasure. You use alcohol to deal with your demons. People do that. And so literally you have a character drinking to deal with her demon, as a way of fighting her demon. So,
Exactly.
so that was the concept number one. Number two, because you're a horror buff and you want to, you want to impress the horror community. You want to show them like, hey, we're one of you. I've got some knowledge here. It's like the Spock mask. The Spock mask was a deliberate choice, and I thought to myself, gee, this could either really work or it could really backfire. It's a risk, like I'm like, people might see the Spock mask and think it's a lazy idea. What, you just put a Spock mask on him? But thankfully, a lot of festival programmers are they're very knowledgeable, and they would accept the film. So they all love the Spock mask idea. So great. So that worked, but it was risky. But here's a fun fact. Way before I made the short, I was talking to a horror producer, and I'm using that in quotes because I told him that he said, what's so special about the killer in your script? And I told him he's wearing a Spock mask. And it was like a dumb look on his face. Like he did not understand why that was special. And I just shook my head. It's like, this guy just didn't. I'm like, a horror producer? Okay. All right.
Doesn't get it.
That was years ago. But so you've got the concept, the mask. Number three, the long continuous take. So again, style going to the bottom. Like that's how I'm ranking it, because you don't want people like, oh, watch this, it's one continuous take. You don't want it to be a gimmick, but you want it to be a deliberate choice that enhances the storytelling, right? That was my approach. Even though I watched films like Children of Men and so on, the number one person I studied to get the one take aspect right was Spielberg, because his oneers, he's doing it and you don't even notice it's happening. You don't even notice. His blocking is phenomenal. Probably the best director at blocking. I mean, it's just where your camera lands and where it continues moving forward. It's subconscious. So I wanted the one take thing to be subconscious, and I knew that the one take is still going to be a talking point and people would talk about it, and that's fine. But I wanted the one take to be more about immersing you into the experience and the story. And I thought, and the reason why I would use it is because it's the storytelling device behind it, the thought behind it is, when the killer comes out, you're not cutting away to somewhere else or to a different location, because I feel like you can feel the cut, you can feel this little jump, and you realize you're watching a movie. But to be stuck there as a person, you're in the room and there's no cutting away to safety. Every time I watch a movie and there's people in a room that's trapped with something dangerous or they're trying to escape, like even when you're like, let's say a movie like The Martian, right? You want to feel isolated on Mars, but when we cut away to Earth or to someone in a space station near Earth, you feel like, oh, well, we're in a safe zone now. But if we were trapped and isolated with Matt Damon, in my opinion, it's just like, you want to feel trapped and isolated. You want to get off this rock,
Exactly.
But that would have been my approach. That's my style. It's still a successful movie and people love it. And it's a great movie. So, but that's just my approach, and that's the same approach that I took with, dangerous situations in filmmaking. You want to be trapped and escaped, So also another reason why the idea to get the one take is that it wasn't one take before. The short film wasn't designed as a one take before. It was, but it all happened within a short period of time. And I discovered that, wow, I can connect all the shots and make it one take. But the reason why I thought about doing it in one take was a couple things. One, there was a cinematographer who dropped out, but he wasn't going to be, we were talking to him about filming it. He said that I have this Ronin or whatever kind of Steadicam type device, and I hadn't planned my shots like it to be a gliding Steadicam style film. But I thought to myself, well, he's offering this
Mm-hmm.
tool. Is there any reason to use it? And if I were to use that tool, how would I use it? And then I started realizing, oh wow, we can connect all the shots together, you know? So all the compositions that I planned out before for the short were the same. I just connected it in one continuous take, you know?
Gotcha.
Because we don't jump forward in time or cut back to anything else. So there's no reason to cut away. We can do this. And also there was another like short 2-3 minute film at the time that was like one take, but nothing really happened, but it got some press. And I'm like, this got some press. Let's do something really hard and ambitious with
Yeah.
one take, instead of just a guy walks in the room and then something happens and then he runs out of the room, which was basically that little short that I saw. But I wanted to, you know, push even harder. Is there anything else about the continuous take that I wanted to mention? No. Okay, so that's number 3.
Well, what's really important about that as well is it's immersive. It puts the audience in the position that the characters are experiencing. So they're there with them the whole way through. It's a very powerful way of shooting it.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, I love shooting the one continuous take style because you don't have to do so many setups. You know,
Yeah.
you can lighten a way to keep the lighting mostly the same. You can cheat a little bit between some of the transitional cuts, but what I can't stand as a director is, you know, here's an establishing shot, here's a medium shot, here's a close-up shot, and it just takes way longer to get all the shots done, and the actors get a little tired of it. You want them to live in a scene and do the same thing, but without knowing that they're in a close-up or worry about anything else. It's camera do the work, let them do their work, and create this harmony. So, but yeah, I find it very tedious to just keep doing the same thing again, but from a different angle this time.
It's difficult, and that's a great point as well. Is
it's quite liberating. I give it a shot if anyone's you know, feels a little reluctant to try it, even though you want to, just do it. I did a lot of practice before doing the short film. It's like I shot the short film like 3 times with a cheap camera in rehearsals to make sure we got all of our marks correct. You know, we were going to, and I edited it too. So we did a lot of practice. I wanted to make sure with the whip pans and the cuts that they were going to line up properly. So it's like I made the short 3 times before I shot it for real with like a red camera, and we have all the props and we're ready to go.
right.
So, it takes a lot of work and planning. Okay, number 4. So we went from concept to the mask to the one continuous take. So number 4, reasons for people to click on it. Again, it was getting it into as many festivals as possible. Now, look, if you can't, I thought to myself, if I can't get into prestigious festivals, if I can't get into quality, but you know, I admire any small festival, which is why I'm always communicating and pushing and promoting them too, you know? So it's like, I want to help everyone. But if I can't get into what is perceived by the media as quality festival, then I'm going to get into quantity, right? So I would tell people at the time, okay, I think I can get into between minimum 100 festivals up to 150. And people thought that's ridiculous, Sean. No short does that. And shorts have done it before, but they thought I was out of my mind. And turns out I got into 200, right? So I was still underestimating myself, you know? I mean, you don't want to overestimate because then you'll be disappointed and you might, you know, but again, if you're someone who still feels like you can't, you're underestimating yourself,
right.
you know? You don't realize the limitless power that you might have, you know? Just don't let your ego get too big. Just keep the ego in check and believe that you can do it, and you'll do everything in your power to try to make it happen, you know, no matter what. So I realized, but thankfully I got into, you know, major festivals like South by Southwest and like 5 other qualifying film festivals, and eventually, you know, did a theater run and got Oscar qualified, you know. So, and these are all things that I did, you know, and I'm not doing it, that's not the end game, you know. The reason why I'm getting all this these accolades and getting all this attention is to further to further what's the word? To further give confidence to anyone who's going to be investing and producing the
Right.
film with me. And that's the reason why I want to achieve all this positive feedback from, major entities. Thankfully, I got my very first Vimeo staff pick. It was the first horror film to be a staff pick premiere on Vimeo.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is that like I would watch Vimeo staff picks regularly while making the film. After making the film, I would review my film and think to myself, okay, I think it's good. Is it Vimeo staff pick good? Is it? I mean, every programmer, and curator, they're going to have their own tastes and so on. But I'm hoping it lines up with their taste.
Yeah.
It got into short of the week and film shortage, so I couldn't be happier with the results that I got. And it went even further than I could have dreamed of. And remember, me right before making the film, I was ready to quit the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it blew up right after.
So yeah, and I started getting a lot of reach outs by production companies, managers, and agents, and a bunch of, and I took lots of meetings, and and one of the things I've learned, again, I'm jumping to some of your other questions. I'm just rambling, but yeah, some of those companies that were interested in making a feature of my film don't exist anymore after the Me Too movement. So it's like this big company that you think, oh, wow, I'm going to make my first feature because they're interested. Then they're axed. So it's like, and the guy who did Child's Play, the remake, he made a feature film with Dimension, Harvey Weinstein's company. And now that movie was just about to come out in theaters. And then right after that, the movement started, that film got axed.
Wow.
So I think it eventually got released VOD somewhere, but that could have happened to my film, So, but I think one of the most important things that I've learned while learning more about the business is that I think it's really important to be a producer of your own work, regardless if you're a screenwriter, director, it doesn't matter. I think if you created something and you own the copyright, the intellectual property of it, that's very valuable. And I think you need to be in control of that. That's an asset, and form your own company, own that company, and retain the rights to your intellectual property as you move forward, making business deals, licensing, and funding. I know a lot of screenwriters want to sell their scripts and then they don't own it, they don't control it afterwards. And if that's your thing, that's fine. If you don't want to work any further on your own scripts and you just want to write and sell, and that's your thing, that's fine too. But if you care about the people that you're selling your script to, that they're going to do it justice, maybe you should be a producer and own your own script and copy, retain. If you're going to make a feature film, treat it like being a showrunner. If you're, I mean, this is what I'm recommending to any screenwriter that cares about the quality of the film made based on their script, right? Like if you want to just sell it and be done with it, that's fine. But if you care about being a known screenwriter whose films are always great, but you don't want to direct them really, treat it like being a showrunner. Be a producer. Find the director that you think will do justice for your script. Find the type of director who doesn't mind doing TV work, right? Because those directors don't have control over the script. The showrunners, the networks, and so on. Like they have a much higher power to answer to. But if you're a showrunner of your own movie, I think, and you want to find a director that you think will bring the right vision to your to your words. That might be a better way to go about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are great tips. I think that was pretty amazing as well. I wanted to know more about the cast as well for your film.
Yeah.
How was it like working with Lily Berlina? How did you two approach a scene?
Well, let's see. Well, Lily's just amazing, right? And she, I think you disappeared. Oh. I saw S9 there. So anyway, she was an amazing team player. She felt like not just an actress. She's like one of the crew. Like she basically saved the shoot. I mean, because we had a previous actress before who got cold feet and they dropped out. And I don't blame her because, this is a role that requires, a woman to be in her underwear the entire time. And the camera, lingers and gazes there, but it's repurposed for, a reason, as the horror trope, right?
Sure.
And you're meeting people that you're unsure about, like these are new people, how are you going to be treated? So it's a risk, and you just have to build trust with someone, and that you're going to do, you're going to treat them well, and bring just, every reason and every shot, there's a reason behind it. So Lily was just a real team player. She worked so hard. Even after like rehearsals, like at the location we were rehearsing, she would like clean up and do dishes for the people, the location. I mean, how phenomenal is that? She, I just would show her and this is kind of a weird thing, but because her character can't speak, right? So I would have to kind of pantomime what she needs to do, and even like talk about the sexy dance. I had to do this weird feminine, looking like a total idiot, but yeah, there was a she put everything in there. She really drank a lot of you ever seen she drank a lot of water, and yeah, I mean, she gave it her all. I mean, she's one of those people where instead of like pushing your actor, I'm trying to hold them back, because I'm worried, what if you get hurt?
Yeah.
She's like, no, I got this. So what's
that's
that?
a fantastic attitude to have. That's very rare.
Yeah, an actor a main leading actor could set the whole mood of the entire crew, like a director can, but certainly an actor will as well. So, but if you've got a great spirit and you make everyone around you feel good, that's the tone. Like I couldn't be that's like more than you can ask for. There was we had trouble on set. Like the camera fell before our very first take and it broke. It was this red camera and it got damaged and we couldn't make it work. And I was stressed out. It's like I put my own money into this. I put so much planning into this, and I thought, okay, now that's the end of my career because I'm losing the film now.
Yeah.
But the whole team was way more positive and supportive, and they were calling as many personal red owners as they knew, or any other kind of camera, just whatever high quality camera we could get our hands on a Sunday night, when all rental places are definitely closed. Mm-hmm. And we finally found someone, on the other side of town. So by the time we got a new camera and started rolling, we'd lost half a day.
Wow.
So we booked 2 days of shooting. And in my shot list, I realized, we can get this done in a day and a half. After doing so many rehearsals, I can tell, we can get this done in a day and a half. 2 days is plenty of time. We don't have to rush. We lost half a day, so we have exactly a day and a half to get everything done. And we got the last shot at the last minute, just before the sun came up, because a minute later, the whole room would have looked different, sun coming through. So I was just so happy that the film was just done. We got everything we needed at the last second. And there was no way I would be able to reschedule it soon because this was like right before Christmas and everyone was in town. Like my producer left town that day, on the day of shooting,
Wow.
So that was it was a very stressful, working against the clock, the sun. It was tough, but we pulled through. And, as I'm dropping off crew in this big van, because we don't have a driver, so I'm dropping everyone off in the morning after doing another all-nighter, completely physically worn out, emotionally worn out. And after I was done dropping everyone off, I'm like, okay, now that no one's in the van, I can cry a little bit, and I could be like, we made it, we almost did it, we did it,
We survived.
Yeah, barely. And it's just, I was just able to appreciate that I had a film to edit and to have in post. And, like production is always the most stressful part, and even pre-production, the tension, just the anticipation, what's going to happen in production, it's like you're anticipating a big scare,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was tough.
That's tough. That's kind of the life of an indie director as well. I make my own content in as well, and I can sympathize with that.
I've decided I'm not going to be an indie director. I'm going to be a big studio director now. I'm a big studio. I'm a big boy now. I'm a big boy. I have lots of money to play with. Indie's not for me. I'm a big director now. Give me those millions.
It's tough for directors as well, because I can't tell you how many times I've walked on union sets on the first day, and it's just something went wrong. The light fell down, broke. Now we have to wait.
Law always in effect.
Yeah. So it's something that you face on a day of set. It's just every day in Hollywood, I would say, you know. So that was great. Thank you for talking about that. I wanted to talk a bit more about after when you finished and how you marketed the film. What were some of the key aspects that brought you some of the best results? What did you learn from that?
So okay, so the four things I talked about: concept, the mask, the one continuous take, and the what was the fourth one again? Getting into a quantity of festivals, right? So I first thing I did was as I was nearing completion of the film and still educating myself, I found this list by Adrian Tofay, who now I'm Facebook friends with. He has the best information. So he had a list at the time for like the top 100 festivals for horror, right? And he had these different categories and everything. And that was my festival strategy, you know? I'm like, oh, wow. So I can, make a list of all the festivals. When did their deadlines, when did submissions open? And so I had a big plan that I had to write out to myself and have notifications on when, submissions open for certain festivals. And, my very first festival was in this big festival in South Korea, BFON, Bukyan International Fantastic Film Festival.
Oh.
And so Night of the Slasher opened, had its world premiere in South Korea. And, and I hear that that's a very difficult festival to get into. Like people who've gotten into like Fantastic Fest have not been able to crack, this particular one. So, so I felt honored, and I wish I had the money to go there and be part of it. But I've been told, that from people who go to that festival, filmmakers are treated so well, just unbelievably well. And in the emails, they were so kind. I got to meet even one of the one of the staff members of the festival in LA once. So that was really neat. So after I got into BFON, I thought, okay, well, now I'm going to put the BFON words, boom, right on the still image of my short and continue submitting to festivals so they can see, hey, this big festival liked it. Maybe you'll do, just a little bit of influence. I wrote a little cover letter to pretty much every single festival, that I submitted to. Who knows if they read it or not, but it's just like, I'm going to put in the effort anyway.
Right.
You got to give it all you've got if you love this thing so much and you want to share it with the world. So then it started getting into festivals nonstop. Like there was like zero rejections for like 3 to 4 months. It was unbelievable. I got into by the time I reached about like 88 film festivals acceptances, I was at Screenfest where Night of the Slasher was also playing, and I met Patricia Chica, who is a filmmaker and a publicist. And I'm like, hey, I can certainly use a publicist. And so she is very well connected with the horror community, horror journalism, and regular journalism. I mean, she also does publicity for non-horror films too, and with great success. So she and I discussed how to write a press release, and I already created many reasons for journalists to talk about it, like the fourth thing, concept mask, the one take thing, but also the amount of festivals it got into, and it got into some Oscar qualifying film festivals too. So that way, journalists were able to write things like horror film competes for Oscar contention or something like that, and that's a very clickable, attractive article. So I would use those articles, and I would put them on my, my Night of the Slasher page, and then I started boosting those posts. I would look at the Facebook guidelines and what it takes, what you're allowed to do, what you can't, and how you can, use their settings to reach a certain audience or a wide audience. And I did a lot of research on people who've used it and what works best for them. So again, research is so important. You can't just make a thing and be like, okay, you know, the world owes me something, you know. You gotta keep selling it to them, you know. You gotta keep pushing for it, you know. It's this never-ending cycle, you know. And by the way, I mean, as a director, I'm also a producer, so like I enjoy every single aspect of this. So from writing to the pre-production to the budgeting to the, you know, to the marketing and so on. Like, you know, I'm self-marketing, but I learned very quickly.
Right.
And I'm able to do a better job than some people who do it for a living, you know. But all it takes is always be in a state of, I don't know enough, right? What else can I learn? And what have all the successful people done, but what aren't they doing so you can stand out from them, you know? So when you look at what are the successes, learn about what they didn't do or what they avoid doing, or, you know, so whatever they're not doing, I'm going to do that, you know, because I feel like I'll stand out. So you have to be in a constant state of ambition and how to position yourself. Actually, I have a book here. I have a stack of books here that I'd love to recommend. So I made sure I had them at the ready. Where was I? Oh yeah. So I kept using Facebook as Facebook was my main attractor. You know, it was the vehicle that was able to make it widely spread, and that's when I was getting contacted by larger studios and agents and managers and so on. So that's how they found me, because they like to discover, you know. If I submitted Night of the Slasher, hey, check out my short, they'd be like, we're not interested. But then they see it doing well. They're like, hey, what's that great thing you got there? You know? Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, but never mind that. You know, I think the best thing to do is keep doing the thing you love and do everything, give everything you possibly can to make it a great thing, you know, and people will start coming to you. But be careful, be very selective with who approaches you, because I've made the mistake of, just because someone approaches you and they're super passionate about their work doesn't mean they're right for you. You know, like I've made wrong decisions to like give certain people a chance who came to me very passionately. And it's so hard to not say yes, right? Because they love your work so much and that's all you ever wanted, right? But they might not be on the same page with you on what you want and your business ethics and so on. I'd rather, I mean, if I were given a choice, obviously you would love to work with someone who's passionate about your work, but they do their job well and, you know, and they deliver what they promise, right? Professionalism is making a promise and delivering on that. But yeah, but if given the choice, if someone like didn't care about my work, but they were going to still set up meetings and push me out there, I'd rather work with that guy, you know? So yeah, I think the best thing to do is figure out who delivers on their promises. That's the number one reason on who you decide to work with, you know? Because even if someone's super successful and they're passionate about your work and they want to say they want to give you the world, and then they don't do anything once you decide to work with them, leave them, forget them. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest things I've learned. So someone passionate about your work doesn't mean they're the right people to work with. Work with people who deliver on their promises.
And people like that kind of come and go. So it's definitely a life experience. It'll come as it goes, and you'll learn as you come along.
And this industry is full of flaky people. You know, you don't want to work with flaky people. You want people that, you know, deliver what they promise. And I keep repeating that, but it's so important. You know? Yeah.
It is definitely important. Well, thank you for that. That was a great tip that you gave off there. So the next question I had for you, what were some of the more important lessons that you gained from producing your short film, now that you can reflect back?
Gosh, well, I just mentioned a lot of important lessons. Well, I think one of the things I've realized since producing the short, you know, like I kept playing with what's the right path for me, trying to figure out now what's the right path, you know, and you know, and it took me a long time to still figure it out. It's like, well, you know, do I take this job over here, you know, like some spec script, or do I keep pushing forward with my Night of the Slasher feature? Like, you know, the world has opened up. There's all these options. How, you know, and if I'm going to follow Night of the Slasher feature, do I have to sell it in order to, you know, to how do I gain control of it? You know, it's like, but one of the things I've realized is that every company that approaches you, they have their own agenda. They might be really interested in your feature script for the horror short that you made, but they're only reading it just so they can say, okay, yeah, this script's not for us, but we want to hire you as a writer for these other things we own. You know, they're not really looking to make your thing. They want to see if you can write their thing. You know, which some people might not see it as a bad thing, but I think it's disingenuous if that's the approach you do. You know, like I'd rather be like, hey, we love your short, but we're not interested in the feature, but we have these other projects. That's the kind of, if I was approached that way, I would feel like, okay, I'm working with more honest people here, you know, they're more straightforward. But someone could say they love your work and they want to make a feature, but they might take that and stick it on the stack of other features from other directors and try to sell it as a package. And then you might make a cheaper, worse version of it, or not at all. They're using it to give options to studios or investors, whoever it is. So your feature script or short as a feature is just a stack of other lumped in with other people's stuff. So that guy could try to sell one or two or of the other ones, you know? So be aware of that. I think one of them, again, don't let people treat your work as like a sample. When people say, hey, can you send us a writing sample? They mean a feature script. And it's like, you mean the vehicle, my life's work that I'm turning into a movie, you know, that I'm going to get funding for? Is it just a sample? You know, like people use this, that term to marginalize screenwriters and directors so they can, you know, they can mentally lower themselves and maybe give it up for like a cheaper, you know, bring less value. You know, they make, you know, creators value their work less and value themselves less. And then they feel that they're lucky to receive any kind of attention or money, whatever small money it is. So if you go in with the attitude that, well, I have a very valuable property, well, they can't argue against that, you know? Like if they're willing to pay for it, make sure they pay for what it's actually worth. Which is why agents try to, you know, negotiate for you, do it harder. But you know, if more screenwriters, I believe, if writers just had the producing savviness, you know, if you were also thought like a producer and a business owner, you would learn to value your work and yourself more. And you know, if every screenwriter was had their own company and were their own producers, I don't think literary agents might exist anymore because you can take care of yourself, you know. And so companies and studios and funding groups would have to deal directly with you instead of go through. But if you were smart enough to, you know, and had the ability to negotiate, you know. But most people just say, oh, I'll just let this other guy do it for me, this other producer, this other agent do it for me. You know, there's nothing wrong with having an agent, but, you know, but if you're on your own, I think you should learn to take care of yourself and learn to value yourself and be honest with yourself with how valuable is the work that you created just is, you know? So like Night of the Slasher began as an idea and a concept, and to other people, like any idea just has no value. So I decided, well, I'm going to prove that it has value. So I'm going to create value. So that's why I'm making the short, winning awards, and getting this attention for it is creating value, you know? And a lot of value is perceptive, right? So, because when, you know, a distributor goes into Sundance, let's say, and there's a bidding war for a film, how much does the film actually cost? If there's a bidding war, people are, you know, that's perceived value. You know, you're kind of trying to buy air. It's like, well, I'll pay more for it, but does it make it an actually more valuable film? Because a studio, you know, might start bidding at $1 million, and then other studios or distributors might bid for that film, and then the price goes up to 30 million, and then the movie just fucking fails. Then the movie fails at the box office, and that was 30 million wasted. So it wasn't worth 30 million to begin with, you know. So it's that's just perceived value. We know what's actual value though, capital. So if you have a script and you want the industry to pay attention, production companies and so on, like let's say you have a a pretty good script, and then the guy next to you has a pretty good script also, but that guy just got 20 million to make his script.
Right.
Who do you think agents want to talk to? Equally good scripts. Who do you think they want to talk to? Because people, so value to this industry is capital. That's something like there's actual funding there.
Yeah.
You know, like so people only care about who has money. You know,
Right.
so like an agent will. I mean, not all agents. This is just, you know, but a certain type of agent, which is a lot of them, would push a shitty script to their client, you know, like their A-list actor, that has like, that's going to pay them $5 million versus a phenomenal, wonderful career-making script, but there's like no money behind it. They wouldn't even show it, you know?
Right.
So, so yeah, I think learning to produce and financing, I think is an important aspect for any person in this industry, whether you're a director or screenwriter, you know, and that way other producers will respect you. Because a lot of producers are like, oh, this screenwriter doesn't realize what I have to go through, you know,
Right.
to make their dreams come true. So then there's a little bit of resentment, you know, where they look down on you because they don't understand they think that you don't understand their hardships. So the more you learn about every department creates more mutual respect. And, you know, like I learn as much as I can, even about like post-production. Post-production, they're at the tail end of, you know, the movie making process or TV shows. And a lot of even high-end producers and high-end networks, they deliver terrible footage to them or things that are difficult to work on. They're like, just deal with it, you know, and this is what's in our budget, you know, just deal with it. It's much better to bring in post-production and talk to them early as possible so you can make sure the footage that you're shooting in the manner that they ask for, it's a smooth process for them.
Right.
You know, and it creates a much better working relationship with everyone. So learning about each other's skills, you know, I think creates a more harmonious, you know, working environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like you should really educate yourself on each department and learn the business so you're aware of what you're stepping into.
Yeah, I think, you know, and most creatives shy away from business and like, well, I'm a creative, I don't want to deal with it, but learn something. Just know a little bit about something. If a producer's willing to learn as much as they can about your craft, even though they can't write, try to learn something about them just so you can communicate, you know, like if a producer's communicating their thoughts, giving you notes on your script, even though they're not a creative, shouldn't you be able to reciprocate that and be like, hey, I have some producing ideas in order to make this work or that practical effect work or this location, we can, you know, if you can offer something like that back, I think that creates a tighter bond, you know?
Right.
I think that's always important. Let's see. Yeah, hey, you know, I have a few books here that I recommend reading books.
Ooh, let's hear it.
And make my life easier, and hopefully that'll help you too. But we've talked about marketing quite a bit, so I'd say get this book, Positioning. So it's created by you know, it's written by these marketing guys, and it's a very smart book, and it's really more about the thought process of how to market something to people, you know, and how to position yourself to stand out from the pack, you know.
Right.
Oh yeah, Never Split the Difference in Negotiations by Chris Voss. And so people think when they're negotiating and making a deal, you have to compromise and no one's happy. That's not necessarily true. The better you communicate and talk about what you're flexible on and what you're not flexible on, you can create a business arrangement where everyone's happy. So
Right.
to me, compromise is like a dirty word, you know, but having a mutual business arrangement sounds more positive. Like everyone thinks they won, you know, because, you know, business is about how you can mutually, you know, benefit from each other.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great book. Chris Voss was formerly a hostage negotiator for the FBI, right? So, and he uses his hostage negotiating skills, and he uses that as an analogy to relate to business talks. And now he, you know, and now he advises like Fortune 500 companies. Yeah.
Oh my.
Here's another great book, Creativity Inc. By Ed Catmull. It talks about the Pixar days. So it talks about the creative and the business side of things and how Pixar began and, you know, and what it led to. He talks about communicating with creatives and note giving. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Here's a book that nobody talks about, and it's a very tough and dense read, but Investing in Movies by Joseph N. Cohen. And so this is a book written for investors who've got tens of millions to spend, and producers as well. So it's not a book on how to make a movie. It's a book for you, rich person, on how to choose what movie to invest your millions in. So now you're getting into the investor mindset and what are their needs. And I think that's going to be very helpful. And there's some great information in there that you won't find in any other book. Yeah. And is this okay that I'm just showing off a few
Oh,
books?
absolutely. This is awesome.
I hope this is helpful to anyone who's watching, you know.
Yeah.
And I'll go through these other ones pretty quickly, but I love biographies of people who dealt with a lot of obstacles and struggles. And now, if there's a person, no one's perfect, right? I'm not saying these guys are 100% perfect human beings and heroes, but it's their hustle I respect and I look at, and anything that they've done that people would kind of look down upon. Yeah, I get it. Just don't do it. You know, don't do that part, right? Okay. So if anyone's seen The Founder, check out Grinding It Out by Ray Kroc. It's an interesting read. Let's see. I read this giant Walt Disney book. There is a ton of information in here. It goes into his books and how much money a lot of his movies made and what they cost. I mean, it just, it's really interesting to learn that Walt was the creative type, but his brother Roy handled all the finances. And even Walt made things so difficult for Roy. They would get into these shouting matches, and Walt was going over budget, over deadline. And he kept yelling at Roy. Roy would be like, "Hey, Walt, stop that. We got to be more conscious. We have to be respectful with this money. We're running out of it." And he's like, "We're here to make great movie quality. Just go get more money." And somehow Roy would still keep getting more money despite Walt going over budget and yelling at him. So Roy is like the unsung hero of the Disney company. He was even though it's Walt's name on it. And a great and also like just the kindest soul ever. If you could just like check out George Lucas's Alive. It'll make you feel good about your struggle and people not understanding your vision and overcoming that, and it's really more of like, it's more of a biography that'll make your soul feel better, and give more confidence and build more self-esteem. Even if everyone thinks your vision is crap, and maybe it's not, there's a chance that it's not, they just don't understand it. I mean, some of the struggles I went through, no one liked the script of Night of the Slasher, like the short. And after I made the short, people were like, "Holy crap, that's amazing. What did you change in the script?" And I said, "Nothing." So my personal philosophy is that I think screenplays in general are counterintuitive to movie making. Counterintuitive, because movies are a visual medium and it's like an audio oral experience, right? It's not text on a screen where you're imagining what's happening. It's shown to you and you're hearing it. You're not reading the film and imagining the film. It's completely different. Comic books are closer to film than, because, screenwriting is great as like a map for you to, plan everything out. But, I think it would be amazing if every writer could just storyboard their entire film so they can see it. I have a feature that's entirely storyboarded. And I went through it with this producer friend of mine. It took us 5 hours to go through because he analyzes every little thing. It's exhausting, but it's necessary and great. Right. It's like getting through the nitty-gritty of everything. So in one quick sitting, 5 hours, we went through the storyboarded feature. And then we went through a screenplay together. There's no storyboards. It took us 30 hours. And the majority of the discussion was phrasing the sentence in a way to make sure the reader is imagining things correctly.
Wow.
Yeah. So people might be reading your great screenplay and they don't have an imagination, and they may just write it off and dismiss it and completely completely unfair, you know? And just because, you know, somebody doesn't write well doesn't mean it wouldn't make a great movie, right? Like, you can
Right.
technically write, like, let's take The Matrix, right? I can rewrite that script without changing the story at all, keep all the dialogue. But what if I wrote it in a really crappy way that's like a pain in the ass to read? Like, you know, like Neo punches Agent Smith with the opposite of his left hand, his right. You know, like it's ridiculous, stupid writing, but that's no one's going to read that when they see it on screen. It's still technically a phenomenal movie if it was if the script was written in that terrible manner. I mean, I believe that you know, I mean, the screenplay design is counterintuitive, and that's why a lot of executives respond so well to visuals. You know, they're like, "Oh, great," you know, because that's what movies are. You know, and screenplays are great just to get the story out. You know, like plot it all out, make sure the structure is sound, but is it communicating things visually well? You know,
Right.
great screenplays have been turned into terrible movies, and terrible screenplays have been turned into great movies. So it's really a lot of, you know, chemistry with the producers and the directors, and, you know, and see if they can make magic happen no matter what's written on the page. You know,
Right.
you can make a great movie with some napkin scraps and a lot of improv. It's harder to do it that way, but it's possible, you know?
Exactly right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. And if anyone wanted to read those books, we'll have the titles posted later on.
One more thing. Yeah. Okay. I read this giant CAA book, and I read Michael Ovitz's biography, who was one of the founders of CAA. I am willing to bet that the majority of people at CAA have not read these two books together. I mean, wouldn't you want to read the, you know? But I mean, the more people I've spoken to, they just haven't gotten around to it. But it's like, but it's fascinating to read about it, you know, and to see their point of view and how one might think, and you know, so if you want an insight into, you know, how agents think and what they look for, but I mean, these are agents from like 80s and 90s, so the models, I'm sure, very much changed, but I think the spirit is very much the same. But hey, if you ever have a conversation with an agent and you've read these two books, they might be like, oh wow, you know, this person's really smart, I haven't even read this, let's have a chat, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But it might be and they're entertaining reads, you know. I don't think we've ever had any books published in great detail about you know, Hollywood agencies until these two, like in this depth before, you know, unless if anyone knows, then correct me, but I haven't seen one before that. But yeah, it's I think it's important for, you know, any creative to learn about that and understand their point of view, you know. Yeah, but I'm willing to bet a lot of, like, even, you know, a lot of people who are agents probably haven't dug into this yet, you know.
Right.
I mean, they're pretty new, but not a lot of people have time to read. They're probably too busy reading scripts anyway, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, why would I want to learn about my company? I don't know. We're probably gonna have to delete this. I'm probably sounding like I'm insulting them, you know, which is not my intent. Not my intent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that
So
was a great selection. I'm going to pick up some of those books myself. I'm definitely intrigued. Thank you for that. And if anyone wanted to know about the titles, we'll have them posted afterward. So I have another question. So for future film writers or screenwriters, a big question that pops up is, should they consider film school before jumping into the industry? Is college or university worth it for them?
do you have $100,000?
That's true.
Do you want $100,000 debt?
For life.
Well, I'll tell you this. My answer is, I don't know. And by the way, I don't want people to think I'm just giving advice. I'm just sharing information. I always feel like, well, let me give you advice sounds kind of condescending, you know, like I'm figuring stuff out here too, and I'm just sharing information with fellow filmmakers and hope we all figure it out, you know.
Yeah.
And so, and when it comes to a question like that, I couldn't give advice, but I guess I would tell you what I would do or recommend, or what I've done and what's worked for me, which is, I mean, I didn't technically go to film school. I went to Art Center, which has a remarkable film program. You know, Zack Snyder and Michael Bay went there. So they were in the film program at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. And you know, and if you want more education, and you know, Art Center does have phenomenal courses that make the students there a cut above the rest. You know, like there's a lot of theories and practices that that make people, you know, much better artists in a shorter period of time.
Right.
And yeah, it's very expensive, but I think the education is worth it. You know, like if it's not going to put you into poverty by enrolling, you know.
Right.
But I mean, I was an illustration major there, so again, I started with drawing, painting, concept art, and you know, I think one of the most important things is learning the business more than anything, because you're always going to grow as a creative, you know, as long as you keep working at it and perfecting your craft. But none of it will mean anything if you can't get it out there or talk to someone in the business side.
Right.
And I think that's really, really important. So I don't know. I mean, the curriculum at Art Center has changed drastically since I left. They were still they're always in a state of changing, actually, which is good, because they always hire people who are currently working in the industry. It's not someone who retired 20 years ago and now teaching, you know? So one of their requirements is that the person has to be active in the industry. Right. So they're constantly learning new things and able to share that information with students.
Yeah.
So should you enroll? Maybe. Why don't you sit in and see if it's right for you? Maybe it's not right for everyone. Maybe it's perfect for you. I don't know. Right. Yeah, that's where my head's at on it.
Thank you. I would agree with that. Like I'm completely self-taught, and I've been able to, you know, work locally, and I feel like if you can afford it, it's definitely something that's absolutely beneficial. I think if it's something you want to do, go for it, you know?
Sure.
So I have one last question. It's a tough one. I hope you can take it.
I'm scared.
What is your all-time favorite horror film and why?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier, but Evil Dead 2 made me want to be a filmmaker. However, you know, I'll just name off a few offhand other favorites that I think are just absolute masterpieces, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, yeah.
The spontaneity of that film, it feels documentary-like, and it feels like it was just like the cinematography is like kind of awkward, but on purpose. You know, it's like purposely kind of like on the fly, but it feels so, you know, it doesn't feel planned. You know, it feels like we're just witnessing this stuff happen before me. And you know what? There's not much of a story, really. You know, it's like, it's not really a story. It just feels like events are happening and these characters are just dealing with what's in front of them. It just feels like this experience, you know? So there's no, oh, this thing at the beginning and all these setups tie together at the end. There's none of that shit. It's all just chaos, but it's beautifully constructed. Let's see. That's one of Stanley Kubrick's favorite films. He would rewatch, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre all the time. I love Ridley Scott's Alien and John Carpenter's The Thing. Like, those are masterpieces. I think an underrated one is Phantasm from 1978 or 79.
In that one.
That's a phenomenal one. I highly recommend you check out Phantasm. And yeah, I had the pleasure of working with the villain of that movie who plays the tall man, Angus Scrimm. He was in one of my music videos. He said the famous line "boy" in one of them, and he was also the voice of the alien in my college project, which still hasn't been released, but maybe one day I'll release it publicly. But he did a phenomenal job being the voice of this alien. Let's see. You know, I can't really think of you know, like movies that I don't think are great masterpieces, but I enjoy watching them anyways, like the Friday the 13th series. Like, I'm wearing a Friday the 13th shirt right now.
Oh.
You know? And I love the video game. I don't know if anyone here plays the video game, but I'm constantly, you know, when I need to blow off some steam and take a break, it's fun to run around as Jason or as a counselor running from Jason. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. It feels like I feel a good sense of community being slaughtered or slaughtering them. You feel
If you're a fan of that, you should check out Dead by Daylight. That's a big one. They got a bunch of iconic.
Oh yeah. I've heard about that game. Yeah, I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I think eventually I will. I heard they just added some Silent Hill models.
Pyramid Head. You're a Silent
Yeah.
Hill?
So even though I may not have a game, I keep my eyes and ears open about what's going on in that industry, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's very exciting. Well, it's exciting. I had no idea you were a gamer as well. That's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I'm obsessed with the Resident Evil series and Silent Hill. Like I've been enjoying the remakes. I love that Resident Evil 2 remake. That's great. And I think Resident Evil 7 is phenomenal, you know. I think Silent Hill 2 is better than most horror films. That game's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
That game, oh wow. I mean the emotional depth and the layers of symbolism, you know, in it. It's just remarkable, and I feel like a lot of other movies just fail to capture the heights of that video game. You know,
Yeah.
Last of Us is good too. So
Pretty powerful medium. It's I love it. I love video games and what have they done to influence the film industry. Like look at Hideo Kojima and with Death Stranding. Like
oh yeah, that was an incredible game. You know what I loved about Death Stranding? Now we're getting conversational and talking games, but the remarkable thing about Death Stranding, a lot of people were upset that it's like a walking simulator and you're like an Amazon delivery package guy, right? But I don't know. I kind of found beauty in the quaintness of it, and the monotony of it was kind of great. He made something monotonous feel intriguing, which is, I think, a very difficult thing to do. And and I love the message behind it, that what you leave behind affects others. So when you build a bridge, someone else might be able to use it. And when I find bridges and other structures that help me get across, certain mountain ranges and so on, I mean, it just makes you kind of feel really have this new respect for the streets that you drive every day onto work. It's like somebody built this for us. And I don't know, it just there was a message in it that I kind of articulated, but it's like we should be building bridges. We should be building bridges for others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the message that he leaves. He says tomorrow is in your hands. So it was very inspiring.
I think he did a great subconscious, kind of a positive, like he communicated something positive into everyone. And I hope that translates subconsciously into people's lives, and we're all a bit kinder to each other, and help each other.
We need more of that.
I think it did a good job of exercising an optimistic future, us being able to experience it and actually actively do it. So
yeah,
it
was beautiful. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you for answering those questions. We're going to have some more now from our audience. We're going to be opening up this Q&A to the audience. If you have any questions, we'll like you to unmute yourself and introduce yourself quickly. We'd like to limit the questions to 1 or 2. After you're done asking, we would like you to remute yourself just so the next person can speak. If you end up having more questions and we have additional time at the end, you are more than welcome to having more questions.
Detroit.
If you would like to speak with anyone on the network, you're more than welcome to chat with these guys.
Hey, Troy.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, this is Brandon. Our order is going to be Maria, Lexi, Steven, Henry, and then I think Galaxy left. So let's go ahead and start with Maria.
Fantastic. Welcome, Maria.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hey, Maria. I can hear you.
Hi. Sorry. Hi. Welcome for saying hi from Scotland. So it's really quite late here. So I just want to say I'm a producer and filmmaker. So I'm self-taught, but I started with a background in marketing and PR. So I love horror movies, and I did a short film horror similar to yourself. I had a woman half naked in my horror. It must be something about that. I am a big fan of Japanese horror movies, and a big gamer. Love Resident Evil, Silent Hill. What influenced you on your film? Because I'm a fan of Dario Argento and people like that, and Sarah Romero and old school. What is, if you were to say have your favorite horror director next to you, and who would it be?
So who would be my favorite horror director?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I would probably have to just I don't really have favorites, but I think the person that I would still like to work with and meet would be Sam Raimi, who inspired me to get into filmmaking. Evil Dead 2 was my main inspiration. So I think it'd be great to meet Sam, and I think we could potentially make something great together. I would love to explore that. So well, we'll see when that day comes. Hopefully sooner rather than later. It'd be, even if it's just for like a minute and be like, hey, shake his hand. If it's safe to shake people's hands these days, but be like, hey, like, thank you, the films you made inspire me and it feels good, and I don't know, just say a few words, even at the minimum, it'd be nice to express that and let him know. So, yeah, that'd be it. But hey, best case scenario, we might, he might produce something that I'll direct, or I'll produce something he directs, because I want to see more. I would love to see more films come from him. Yep. He hasn't directed anything in a while, but I think he's doing the Since Drag Me to Hell, and I think he did some of the Ash versus Evil Dead episodes, but I think he's going to do the sequel to Doctor Strange. So I don't think you could pick another greater director for that role after Scott Derrickson. I think Sam Raimi is a phenomenal choice, to do something with psychedelic images and crazy camera movements. And, and I would love to see if you can throw in more practical effects into a Doctor Strange movie. That would be incredible,
Yeah. Well, thank you, Maria. That was very great. We're going to move on to the next person, Lexi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, Lexi.
I'm Lexi, and I'm a published horror writer. I also am a horror reviewer and a festival judge. And I love this talk. This was very informative. It was really great. My question was actually about the continuous take, but you answered that really well. So I have a follow-up. I have another question that I prepared.
Sure.
So my question is about the ending. Why did you choose to have the villain not die? Spoiler for those who haven't seen it, but hopefully we all have.
Oh, no.
I was wondering.
Did we ruin it for everyone?
I was wondering if it was a nod to what happens in slasher movies. I mean, how many Freddy Krueger movies have there been? He never dies. Or if that was for the idea that trauma, you can never really get over your trauma, that it's always something you have to work for. If the ending was more, if we're supposed to take it as a more psychological journey for the main character.
I think you put it together excellently, and you're right on the money with that. It's when we have demons to deal with, we go through it alone, we fight it alone, and occasionally it could come out and harm someone else. Like maybe even you might be dealing with some kind of emotional issue, and you might you might burn a relationship, and someone might not understand what's with you. So I think that's kind of metaphorical for that. It's a metaphor for how, I think about slasher films, and if we were to dive deeper and put more meaning and repurpose it to have more meaning, the main character losing friends because of her demon, like literally they're dying, you're losing friends, and you end up completely alone, which is like, I think, a natural fear of most people. I mean, we're social creatures, we live in a society, and being, isolated and ostracized and, to be separated from the pack is terrifying. And maybe it's something you're dealing with that no one understands. And I think that's a terrifying thought. And, like your parents might not understand, which is why, the parents don't see the demon she's dealing with, and the one guy that has to deal with her, he gets burned. He's a one-night stand, I mean, you might have one-night stands with disposable people, and he was kind of a disposable guy for her, even though still I wanted to show that she feels bad about doing it, some remorse and regret. I mean, we're all complex. We're not all one note, we all have complex feelings about our actions and how we see the world, So, yeah. And again, it just ties in with the trope of like the parents not seeing the killer or no one believing you. And I think that's, I think it all ties into subconsciously why we have films about that, so a director might think literally, oh, it's just a girl surviving a killer and her friends are dying. But if you wanted to, maybe that was subconscious, or maybe the director didn't think further about that, but maybe he, the writer and director thought, maybe they thought literally, but there might have been something subconscious going on with that. But I was conscious of it, and so I did that on purpose, and to leave room for more battles with our demons, because we get better at managing them, but sometimes without even, without warning, a bad memory hits you, you cringe about something, or you just have a day where you're just down and you think about awful things rather than positive. So, yeah, and I wanted a film to kind of express that rather than just say it, So, yeah, that was my that was my goal and intent, and I was hoping I could create that experience, as truthfully and honestly as possible.
Oh, well, perfect. Well, thank you, Lexi. That was a great question. We'll move on to Stephen. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
You're on mute still, Stephen.
Here we go.
Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome. I always find myself working on one or more two projects at a time. I'm curious, what are you working on now besides getting Night Slasher onto the big screen?
Yeah, there's something going on, but all information will be revealed in good time. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I'll say for the moment.
You always find yourself working on more than one project at a time?
Oh, yeah, of course. There was recently a script that I wrote like 7 years ago, and I thought about potentially just selling it off because someone reached out to me and say, hey, do you have any scripts that could be made under a certain budget? And I said, well, I might have this. I looked at this one script that I had from 7 years ago and expected to cringe and think it's crap. And I'm like, but maybe I can just sell it off to this small company. They're not going to, you can't be too picky if you're going to make a movie with such a low budget, right? But as I was rereading it, and obviously there's parts that I took out. I'm like, I wouldn't make that choice now. But as I was rereading it, I realized, no, I don't want to sell. I don't want to let go of this. This is good. Maybe I'm crazy. I'll have my girlfriend read it and my producer friend read it and see what happens. My girlfriend loved it. And she's like, this is my favorite villain you've ever written. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's more reason to hold on to this. But if she hated it and thought it was crap, it'd be like, okay, maybe I'll just sell it off for cheap, like maybe I'm crazy. But she loved it too, and so did my producer buddy as we went through it. And the more I kept revisiting the script, I'm like, I put a lot of work into this. I put a lot of research, and a lot of historical stuff have been embedded into this script too. And this is thank God I'm not looking back and be like, wow, I thought this was good. No, obviously there's some issues that could be rewritten and massaged, but I'm like, there's something here. And so it felt good. I wrote that script during a time when, I was feeling depressed and hopeless, thinking I'm not going to get anywhere. So that's why I didn't want to revisit that script ever again, because I'm like, I wrote this at a bad time. But revisiting it, I'm like, no, there's still a lot of passion in this. And even when I'm still doing something creative, despite my emotional state, I'm still putting everything in there, And so when I revisited it, I'm like, it felt good to see something that reignited my passion and reminded me why I wrote it in the first place. But again, I had to be honest with myself. Am I hallucinating this? Do I have rose-colored glasses? Is bad? But I had other people in my circle that I trust to take a look at it, and they're like, no, this is good. You should move forward with this. So, and I listen to collaborators and teammates, and I feel a room for the temperature, casting, I think I believe I make it very collaborative. Like my entire team loved Lily. They decided we're getting her before I even decided. They're like, Shant, no, you're gonna get this girl. I'm like, all right. It's easy, yes, of course. So, but again, I think one of the things I wanted to point out real quick. I constantly go on tangents, but I've had moments in my life where I tried so hard to prove that I'm not a defensive writer, that I was implementing everyone's notes and I'm trying to please everyone, and it made my writing worse. There was like, I wasn't filtering. I was trying to make everyone happy, to show I'm a team player. Your notes are good. You're smart. Can we make this now? I had that kind of attitude. So I think it's best to have a balance and be like, that's a great note. Let's see if it works later. I'll sit on it. I'll think about it. and go back to it later. I've been given notes where I thought it was the worst note ever. And I'm like, that's dumb. I'm not going to implement that. Obviously, I didn't say it to the person's face, but in my head, I'm like, that's a dumb idea. And then later, I'm like, but what if I tried it? And I'm like, holy shit, that worked really well. Damn. So I'll never be so dismissive ever again. Even if I still get a knee-jerk reaction where I'm like, oh, I don't want to put that in the story. And sometimes later on, it's like, yeah, that's not going to go in later on. Or I'll be like, no, yeah, that fits in perfectly, actually. So always kind of sit on a note and don't be too dismissive no matter how you feel as soon as it's given to you. Even if there's a great note and you think it's great at the moment, later on you realize it might not fit at all and it hurts the story. So sorry, I went off a tangent from your question, but yeah, I'm working on a couple things, but I'm working on one big thing, but yeah, it's nice to take a break from the big thing and work on a side thing and then go back to it, because you need a little bit of variety.
You do.
Like, I think it's great to have a project priority number one instead of treating a bunch of your projects equally, because they're going to be, you're going to spread yourself thin. And it's like, oh, do I go this way, that way? Oh, I'm pulled into so many directions. I think it's best to have your projects in a hierarchy and be like, I'm going to make this no matter what and keep moving forward. I'll have this on the side and keep working, just so you have like a pipeline. Have a pipeline of projects. Don't have it all spread out, hopping around. So,
Awesome.
I mean, but that's my approach. That's what I think.
One more question. Do you still have the Spock mask?
Yeah, I have several actually.
Oh, really?
Okay, you opened up another story. So the Spock mask got ruined just before shooting 2, and it was on a Friday. Stores are closing. There was a miscommunication with my practical effects guy, and I said, "No, yeah, can you spray paint it white? Like how Michael Myers is." So he thought I wanted the mask to look like Michael Myers. So he messed up the hair, messed up everything. I'm like, "This looks like Michael Myers. Why'd you do that?" And he's like, "I thought you wanted it to look just like him." I'm like, no, spray paint it white, just like Michael Myers. So I had to get I called every store in LA, and no one had a Spock mask because I had to order them online. And we're shooting in 2 days. And so I called my producer and asked him to ask around, look around. And there was like a town, a store 2 counties over, and they were going to close in 2 hours. And judging by the traffic from GPS, it's going to take exactly 2 hours to get there. And I'm like, you got to get there now. Get in your car. Get the mask immediately. Otherwise we have no film to shoot. And so he got there just 5 minutes before the store closed.
Wow.
It was really stressful while I was still trying to pick up a few items that were not given to me for the camera. And so that was a whole other stressful situation. So I'm running around town trying to pick up the pieces and make sure everything's, ready to go, while my producer's rushing down to another county to get a mask. When he arrived, I said, just buy them all. He got like 3, no more mess ups.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Appreciate those questions. We're going to move on to the next person now. That would be Henry. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you.
Hey,
My question, I actually have 2, is as a low budget, no budget filmmaker that I have been, I found it really challenging. Do you have some advice to give when you're in that just starting out area? And my other question is, do you think with everything that's happened with COVID, now that there's been so many productions stopped, that there's going to be chances for smaller indie films to fill in those gaps that the larger films are now leaving?
I think well, the answer to your second question, the answer is I don't know. It's when people, every time I've had a plan or had an idea to do something with a company, right, or a major company, and someone says, well, why would this major company want to, deal with you, or, what value are you adding to them? And I would explain coherently why I would, well, this company just bought another company and they have a lot of debt and they're going to need horror to help bring in quick revenue, like that's, I mean, that's kind of like my explanation, but I would also tell people that, you know, anything could happen. Giants could fall tomorrow. Things could change overnight. And I would tell people that all the time, and they would treat me like a crazy guy on the street saying, the world is coming to an end, right? So I would constantly tell people that anything could change at the turn of a dime, right? And it did this year, like the COVID thing, and the theaters, AMC may not be able to run their business anymore after this. I mean, everything changed. So what I'm trying to do to bypass all of this, or to persevere despite the world going crazy, is keep working on my stuff and move, still make the movie moving forward, and roll with the punches. Whatever changes, be aware of them and deal with it as you move forward. Regarding indie versus bigger productions, I don't know. Probably make things worse for indie. I mean, giant powers that be always find a way of consolidating and saving themselves. Like a big major company going bankrupt isn't the same as a small business owner getting bankrupt. It's a very different position that they're in. Like, they still have something soft to land on and other things in place to kind of help them out and to get to get loans and so on to bail them out. Small business owners, like an indie filmmaker, doesn't have that luxury. I'd say as you're moving forward with a small project, get as much in. Make sure you have good insurance. Make sure your attorney writes the best contracts, have all the paperwork in line to protect you and your investors. Always talk to your entertainment attorney as you're, making your film, and make sure that they have your back and looking at every possible angle to make sure that you're protected and the film's protected, bonds and so on. So, and regarding your question about, you said as a low budget to shoestring budget indie filmmaker. So you said, what should you do in the first part of the question, starting out? My question is, are you trying to make a short film, or are you just diving into making a feature film?
Currently, we're working on shorts.
Okay. All right. So if you're trying to make a short film, obviously every film costs money. I think what you got to do is, can you afford your own film? Do you own the copyright? It's probably best that if you're making a short film and you wrote the script and you own the script, also fund the short film as well, or borrow money from family, or get some kind of small loan, whatever it takes. Kickstarter, I hear, is not helping out as much anymore, but do whatever it takes to get that film done. But also know that it's going to cost another $5,000 maybe in festival fees to submit it to like 200 festivals and so on. But I would carefully roll that money out to see the temperature of the festivals, because if you're spending $5,000 and it's all rejections, then it's $5,000 out. So you want to slowly roll that out and see if it's getting into festivals and if it's gaining traction. And if it is, start submitting to more and more, to keep that snowball effect going with it. So that way you could be very more careful with your finances. But it's going to take like another, $3,000 to $5,000 of festival fees if you're going to submit to like 200 to 300 festivals. It's also going to be talk to different, if your short's doing well, talk to different publicity people, to publicists, and see what their rates are and what they can do for you, So, a lot of horror journalists need content to write about, because horror is more narrow. They're not just it's not just a publication that has a wide net of films and A-list celebrities to talk about, and musicals and dramas and superhero movies. No, it's just horror. So horror journalists are more than happy to talk to short filmmakers and discovering new up-and-comers. So you have a much better chance of getting coverage and your short film getting more eyeballs on it. From that, if you go about it that way. Yeah, and again, you do have more of a chance in getting into more horror film festivals because they need content, like they have a more narrow range of films to select from. So your chances are greater with only horror focused film festivals. Still try for some of the big ones, if you feel like it's at that level, if you feel that confident. I mean, look at your film compared to other short films that have gotten into larger festivals and feel like, does it fit in? Do you feel that it has a place next to those films? So yeah, I mean, I think that would be it. So I think if you have once you get a short film made, depending on no matter how you financed it, and if you can gain traction in the festival circuit and get some press on it, I think that's and if it's a good film, I think that's and then good film is subjective anyway. I mean, the terrible films get money all the time, so it's all subjective. Just be like, even if everyone hates it, but you still believe in it and confident in it, you could still end up getting an investment and making a great film, but also keep planning ahead of time as much as you can. Think about what kind of distributors would want it, because a lot of people make films without any distribution, which is common, but it's like jumping off a cliff without a parachute, hoping there's water beneath, and there's no sharp rocks. So I think it's really important to figure out a distribution plan ahead of time. And it'll be a little tough because most distributors won't take a call. A lot of distributors barely watch a lot of films at festivals even, like thousands of films are made every year, and a lot of distributors won't even take a submission just to watch a film, which is crazy. They should have an infrastructure for people to be watching lots of films the way there are readers at certain companies that read a lot of scripts, I think, I mean, Amazon's smart, where it's a platform where everyone could just upload their feature film. It's like, hey, put it all on there, and market it yourself. We'll take a cut, like I think a distributor that is open to all films coming through them. Now I'm giving advice to distributors instead of filmmakers now. And again, it's like, yeah, you know what? I'd love to share information with filmmakers, but I'd like to advise you this is what you distributors better do. But I think the bigger the net you cast and you have an infrastructure to support thousands upon thousands of films to go through to be seen by something, just to make sure you're not missing anything. Because, having agents have a select few people to rep, that blocks out thousands of other potential hit writers, out there, like, the one day, I don't know if I should be saying this out loud, but I'm being very critical of HBO's Game of Thrones now. But the one time when, after the final episode aired, that's like the one time everyone on the internet had a better idea on how to have made it, how to improve it. I'm like, man, any comment on YouTube is an improvement, But I think whoever figures out how to manage every potential writer, every potential film out there is the real winner, and not the ones who are so selective, but they build like not the ones who build walls, but the ones who build like a filter system, for that to happen. Sorry, that's just my opinion to distributors, less to filmmakers. But I think in that entrepreneurial mindset, here's what I would do if I were in your shoes, Yeah, sorry, I hope that wasn't too much of a tangent. Yeah, sorry, there's people writing stuff in the chat. Sorry, was that, Henry, did that help answer anything? Is there anything else?
No, yeah, that's some great advice. Also, I'd throw a book out there if anybody's writing anything or making something. I got a book called Clearance and Copyrights, 4th edition.
I have that one. Yeah, it's a great one. Henry?
Yeah, no, I love it. Sorry, my mic muted on me.
Yeah, that's I think that's really important. By the way, a lot of screenwriters don't realize that. Be very careful with who you get notes from, because you might deal with someone who gives you notes and then they think they deserve a writing credit, So, and they could certainly fight for one, like there have been cases like that if someone gives you notes and it changes drastically your script entirely, then in court, they can potentially force themselves into being a co-writer on your script, even though they didn't type a word. So you got to be careful about that. I think it's really important that you register your work with the government, and also WGA, but, register it in as many places as possible, and protect your copyright. It's the most valuable thing. I mean, why do you think a lot of companies want to buy your script rather than let you just own it and they fund it? They normally do that if you're bringing a lot of funding to the table. Then they're like, okay, let's just partner up as production companies. So I think if you copyright is so important. Disney, the reason why Disney exists as a major corporation is because Walt Disney got screwed over with copyright. He lost Oswald the Rabbit. And so, he decided to, from now on, when I create characters, I am not selling them. I am only licensing them out to companies. No one's allowed to have any ownership. I own them outright. So think of yourself as a company, and every script that you make is an asset. Or think of your script, your intellectual property, as a smaller company. You don't create companies just to sell them off. You create them to build value with them, and then you sell them off when it's worth billions, right? So, but think of your scripts as a valuable IP. And, because like when you're a restaurant owner, you don't build a pizza place and take money to sell it off so then you could be hired as the manager of your own pizza place that you created. You want to be the owner, the business owner of that restaurant, which is analogously speaking your script. But I have very strong beliefs in creator ownership, and I think more people should try that, because it breaks my heart to see a lot of screenwriters just submitting and hoping to be read and hoping to be picked up. I mean, that's kind of like trying to win the lottery. I think you should focus on how to build your own opportunity, rather than hoping opportunity finds you, or, I think you should work on building that yourself. And I think you'd have more successes that way. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, that's how Walt Disney did it. That's how George Lucas did it, So I don't know why more people don't try to follow what they did, But I think business is, and math is something that scares creators, and I think they shy away from it. And I think it's a normal thing. But hey, be a hero in your own story and face your fears, and just take a stab at it, right? I mean, give it a look. Give it a look. It might help you. It's certainly helping me, and I hope I can share more information in the future of how I did it. So, I always have an idea and people don't believe in it, and then I prove it and it works and it's a success. So, and then I share everything I know. Okay, this is what worked for me, So I have some thoughts and beliefs, and I think that's going to work. I hope that I can prove it. So we can do another Q&A, and I'll share with everyone how it all happened. So crossing my fingers,
Awesome. Well, thank you, Henry. That was fantastic. Some great questions there. For the next person, we're not sure if Insomnia is here. That's the next person. Are they still in this chat? Let me just double check. Insomnia. I believe they just left. So I'll go on to the next person. That would be Corey. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you. Hi, Shant. I'm a film composer, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about music in your own films, in horror scores you like, film composers you like, and yeah, there you go. Leave it there.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a favorite film composer. Like every time I think about who I'd love to compose my film, like for feature, and I have my like dream wish, it's like, fuck, you're all great. I'll take any one of you, I mean, there's so many talented composers out there, and everyone has like, oh, I love what this composer does with this kind of instrument, or I love the emotion this one, the subtlety of the emotion this one brings out. So, and even when bands, when they score a piece, like Daft that's pretty cool too. Or a band member, like Johnny Greenwood, or from Radiohead, or guy from Nine Inch Nails, forgetting
Trent Reznor.
I had a mind fart right now. It's gone. What was his name?
Trent Reznor.
Trent Reznor. Yes, exactly. So, yeah. So it's such a wide ocean of talent in film composers. I can't name a favorite. You might be my favorite. So,
Well, I did. Is this where I do my own pitch? Yeah, I won the HorrOrigins best score for my film score to Arctic in the fall, and
Cool.
that just got released. It's on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, all your favorites. So yeah, go check it out. Arctic.
Send me a link. My email is
RTIK.
available, so you guys can reach out to me if you want. Send me a link, and I'd be happy to check out your score.
All right, thanks, Shant.
That's fantastic.
Oh, but now that we're talking about film composition, if Simon Michel, who ends up watching this recording, he was great on Night of the Slasher. So he worked in Germany while I was, and I would send him notes from the U.S. So we never got to be in the same room, which is a shame. But we've worked on a couple of projects together, and he absolutely killed it for Night of the Slasher. So.
If there are no other questions, do you mind elaborating on that process that you had, or the type of music you wanted and what you got, what the process was like for you specifically on the film?
Yeah, it was the hardest part because Simon Michel on the first project we worked on was like a small little webisode called Herman the Monkey. And on his very first draft, it worked. And I had like no notes. And I'm like, this is perfect. There's nothing else. So easily I worked with him on Night of the Slasher. And boy, that it has nothing to do with him. The film is hard to score. That's simple as that. It is a very difficult film to score. We went back and forth for months. Like we spent months trying to get the score right for Night of the Slasher. He eventually, like at one point we had this whole score and then we threw it out and started from scratch again. Which is rough and it's hard, but Simon's such a great sport, super talented guy. He started from scratch again, and that's a hard thing to deal with after working on it for months and you throw everything out and start from scratch again. But he did it, and then we were able to get on the right track after starting from scratch again. And but also part of it is. We're not in the same room. It's hard to discuss certain things. If I would send notes, then it would be misinterpreted, and it's like got to talk on FaceTime again to get it right. But the distance, the long distance communication, I'd say, was added to the difficulty of a tough film to score. So, but he in the end knocked it out of the park. He did wonderful, and. And he's won like awards for it too. So very proud of him, very proud, very happy to have worked with him, and hoping to work with him and new composers all on multiple projects. I want to work with all of you. So that'd be great. I was trying to, one of the cool things that I learned also for any director that's listening, with Simon, every time I gave him notes, he would always express how happy he was at the way I delivered the notes, because I was very nice and it was kind. Because he's dealt with many directors previously who are like, well, this is shit. This is crap. What the fuck were you thinking? They have this like nasty attitude, and it's not constructive or helping the note giving process and the creative collaboration. So one of the things I realized, I'm like, it's a good quality. It's like, just be kind, and if something's not working, just talk about what's the change that you need would help enhance the piece. Like I remember one time I was in a room with casting directors, and these actors would mispronounce some of the words in the script, but I didn't correct them, and I let them just do their thing. And the casting directors were shocked. We're like, that was amazing, Shant. You didn't correct the actors, like throwing them off their game. It's like a lot of directors or writers would get all, no, it's actually pronounced like this. So, I think it's best when people are in the middle of a performance or doing something, you know, you don't correct them or point out something that makes them self-conscious, and it's an audition anyway, but you would correct them eventually on if you hire them. Just be like, oh, it's actually pronounced like this. And what else? Yeah, and never tell an actor that they did a bad take or that they sucked or anything like that. And most of the time, you know, on my set, my actors are so good, and I just didn't get the camera right, or maybe there was a timing issue or something like that. There's a million things on why I don't like the take, and sometimes, and a lot of the times it has nothing to do with the performance, right? But even though you keep redoing the take, the actor gets self-conscious and they're like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, nothing, just keep doing what you're doing, you know, don't worry about it, you know? You got to let them, you can't put doubt in their minds, you know, because then it's gonna set this precedent of doubt for the, you know, as you keep moving forward. So you want to always make sure people that you're working with, that they're in good hands. Your hands are the good hands to be in, and they feel comfortable and that they can do the best job possible, you know. So that's that's my approach. So, and again, so it was nice. And I think that kind of interaction with Simon, you know, certainly helped when I said, hey, I think we need to throw this all out. You know, it's a hard thing to ask for, but if I was an asshole, he probably would have quit, rightfully so, if I were being a jerk. So, but yeah, be really kind and encouraging with the people you work with, and they will work harder and want to do a good job for you. Everyone wants to do their best, and you just want to make them feel like you're nudging them into that place, and they feel more confident about it, you know? So, yeah. And I always tell people, yeah, we should make an adjustment here. I think we need to shift it over there. You know, if something really doesn't work, or if it is awful, I'll just say, you know, all right, let's try again, but this time let's try it this way, you know, because like we're all throwing different ideas and options as a creator, you know, like every sketch you do, every performance you do, every new musical note you put in as a creator. Yeah, we're all trying new things, and it's okay to experiment and fail. And then, you know, what's the right call to make, you know, eventually you just keep working at it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Corey. That was a great question. So if we have any more questions, we have time for one more. Anyone has anything more to ask? We can take one more person.
I'm looking at some of the chats a little bit. Some people are talking about mailing the stuff to yourself. You can certainly do that, but if you ever, God forbid it ever happens, you have to go to some authority in the courtroom or whatever, or arbitration, just be like, here's my copyright registration number, you know, and the date and so on. It feels far more official. I mean, yeah, you can certainly do that. And here's the thing I mailed to myself, and here's the copyright, here's the WGA registration. And it's just like, well, this guy's got it in the back, you know?
Exactly.
So I mean, certainly mail it to yourself as possible, but I think it's worth more to register your things with certain you know, entities to make sure you know, you're protected. You
know? So we have one more question. That's from Sean Dawes. Sean, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, so you mentioned storyboarding your next project, and I was just a shot in the dark kind of a question for you. Because you've already done that side of things, would you be even open to doing a graphic novel sized feature, like adding voiceover content to it? I know right now in the industry, a lot of people are trying to obtain IP as in form of like podcasts and other kind of entities. I don't know if that's an option for you, just because of right now we're on lockdown.
It's so weird. I just discovered, because I've been so deep in development, that when it came up for air just like a week or so ago, I found out people were making podcasts and trying to sell that as an IP. And I'm like, wow, that's a thing that's happening, you know? And I was like, gosh, we've almost gone back to the old 1930s and 40s during the radio show days, you know? But it's a podcast instead of being on the radio. Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting to me. I don't know if I would ever do the voiceover for my own podcast. I don't think I'm kind of a voiceover kind of guy. Probably hired someone to read my own material, but I haven't written or designed any material for any podcast at the moment.
Well, I mean,
And
more
storyboard.
more so creating your storyboards into novelization, like as a graphic novel, and
Right.
then just adding the voice.
Right. So a couple things with that. One of the things that you're kind of mentioning about the voiceover, that's like an animatic, which is where you have storyboards and they're just edited together, and there's a voiceover and sound effects and some music. And every animation company does this to get the right timing for the animators to look at it and make sure that they are going to, before they spend a lot of money and time and labor animating something, they'll storyboard it out and make sure the timing is correct, and locking down the dialogue and the lip movement and all that. But yeah, that's an animatic. And regarding this project, it would be I could do an animatic, and I've made animatics in the past for pitching as well. And yeah, people like seeing animatics, actually, if you do like a 2-minute pitch and so on. So I may do that with this project, and I may even do a slideshow with so that way you can go at your own pace. So you don't have to send a link to someone. If someone wanted to read your script, but you want them to see the whole movie as an animatic, I wouldn't just send them a 2-hour animatic to them, because you don't even know if they're going to watch it, if they're going to walk away from it, they're going to look at their phone. It's better to do, to me, a presentation and a slideshow. So Pixar pitch style, where people are, storyboard artists are pitching their scene, and they're going like slide by slide and trying to go at their own timing, and then it becomes almost like a performance piece, and there's someone live in front of you that you have to respectfully give time to and look at, instead of looking at your phone and being disrespectful while this thing is automatically playing on your own, on its own. So I would much rather, and this actually works a lot better. So doing it the Pixar pitch style, it's not the Pixar pitch style, it's the animation style, and I think all live action movies should do it too. I think we'd get a lot better films. Films would be vastly improved if they all had everything boarded out, and everyone would be on the same page on what to do in production, and you kind of have an easy guideline. Everyone knows what we're going to see, what we're going to shoot. Actors could even see if a storyboard artist is good enough capturing the expression and the emotion. They might not ask so many questions for the director. They might just see it and they get it, and they're like, okay, I know what we're doing. I mean, that's how Ridley Scott is able to minimize endless discussions about rehearsals and talking with actors. It's like they see Ridley Scott's boards and they're like, oh, okay, I know what to do. So he just lets them go at it. And again, like I said earlier, boarding out everything removes so many questions. If a screenwriter screenwriters hire a storyboard artist to board out your entire film, so no one reads it and is like, so what exactly is going on here? I'm trying to imagine, explain to me, visualize this for me. You don't want to deal with a person like that. They just see it. It removes every question. They just look at it and then they're entertained immediately. And they're like, oh, wow. Oh, that's a cool shot. Oh, that's going to have so much impact. They're just going to keep praising it while looking at it, So you want to remove as many questions as possible. And you don't want to keep explaining your work to them. You just want to show it to them and they're like, how can we get started? Oh, this looks ready to go, So if I were just a screenwriter, obviously, like I said earlier, I would produce, but I would hire a storyboard artist. But I draw my own storyboards. Thank you, Art Center Education. So, it's been a long time. So I had to reteach myself how to draw again before boarding out this project. And I've been doing it for, a year and a half still, I'm still painting it, making sure the lighting is right. So they're not just line drawings. They're not scratch drawings. They're a little bit more involved. And regarding the graphic novel question you asked, Bong Joon-ho is having his storyboards for Parasite being released as a graphic novel. And this is an idea. I'm like, oh, I can release my storyboards as a graphic novel potentially, and format it a certain way. But it turns out that's already happening. The Best Picture winner is doing that. And I'm like, hey, investors, I'm doing what the Best Picture guy is doing, but it's better looking, something like. Therefore, it's going to win 2 Best Pictures if possible. I'm just making stupid jokes. So, but yeah, I think the storyboarding process is so important. And also, when you at least do your own stick figures, if that's your drawing level, that's fine. Just do it anyway, and then it will help see holes in your own story and be like, oh wow, that I can't technically make that happen visually, or this description in the scene doesn't make sense. So therefore, you rethink your approach and rewrite that scene. So it's a good process to finding the holes in your script, when you can see it out all in front of you, I hope that answers your question. If you want me to clarify anything else, I'm happy to do so.
Other than that, just I guess move to South Korea, right?
Yeah, all the innovations over there, right? Like I already, nudged my way in a little with my short film into South Korea, so maybe I should.
You're branded. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Sean. That was a great question.
By the way, I think you mentioned the Unreal Engine. It looks amazing on the PS5. Yeah.
There's a company in Hollywood that I've been talking with, and they're doing a lot of stuff with the Unreal Engine. So that's why I kind of also brought it up, is the craft of filmmaking now is going to get much deeper.
Yeah. I love the idea of, again, like George Lucas, he wishes he could just control his characters in a realistic environment, instead of dealing with actors. I don't think, it's, although I'm sure he likes working with the actors that he does, but I think he loves living in his own head so much that he wants to articulate that to an exact T, like having it all animated in a way. I think that's what he truly desires, for film to be indistinguishable from something animated. So that way you can make it completely your own vision from the ground up. And I kind of feel the same way with him, like I kind of feel that too. I'm like, like it'd be amazing if I can just design my character exactly the way I want him or her to look, and not see, can this actor bring, you're trying to find the right fit, but you can just make your character fit however you want it to fit, although the one argument against it is that you lose the spontaneity and other ideas coming from other people, so that's the one thing that you could lose, so but then again, video games are with Resident Evil 2, like the actors in Resident Evil 2 even improv in that video game, so they do have some wiggle room actually when they're playing the models of those characters, and they might improv a line, or I think the actor playing Leon in Resident Evil 2 wanted to run to the train and hold onto it and get dragged across it, and I think that was his idea, and he wanted to do his own stunt by doing that, and he did do that. He ran in a warehouse with the suit on, and he was holding onto a bar with other the crew members pulling his legs as if he's getting dragged across a train that doesn't exist. So it's amazing how far technology has come and what you're able to do with it, so I can't wait what else the future brings.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sean. That was a great question. Thank you to everyone and joining us today on this live Q&A. These were some great discussions that we had, and thank you, Shant, for joining us. This was a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate meeting you and chatting with you about this.
Yeah, you too, Troy, and I really appreciate everyone tuning in and listening to me ramble. If there's anything else anyone wants to talk about, now's the time, maybe. Anything else? I think we're at the end.
Any more questions? I'll just check the chat really quick. Perfect. Well, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at HorrOrigins, and we have a website, www.horrororigins.com. Our next live Q&A is on Wednesday, June 10th at 1 p.m. We'll be joined by the composer and conductor, Tim Williams of Brightburn, Get Out, It, and Annabelle Creations. So please join us on that next one. Please feel free to stick around and chat with each other if you'd like. We'll be finishing the recording here, but we appreciate everyone for joining in.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, HorrOrigins, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
It was great meeting you all.